right, so welcome to the podcast. I'm Francisco, or otherwise known as Paco, and I'm here with...
Justin Docherty.
That's right, Captain Justin Docherty, J-Doc as we call him here at DHQ. So, 2020 and even some of 2021 has been a year like no other. It will without a doubt go into the history books as one of the most troublesome times. The 2020 pandemic has been a global catastrophe, and the devastation associated with it, the lockdowns, economic turmoil, a recession, and possible depression, not even talking about the physical, emotional, and mental toll it's taking on people, is a crisis in and of its own, and something that we will continue to see the ripple effects for a very long time. All of this despair, anxiety, depression, and grief can lead many to doubt the goodness and the nature of God. These feelings are very real. However, they don't cancel or discredit the truth of the nature of God. Today we're talking with Captain Justin Docherty about these topics, and he shares with us some tips on how to find and maintain faith in times of difficulty and distress. So Captain Justin was born and raised on the streets of England, where he grew up under the freedom of some hippie parents. He spent time studying various teachings and philosophies in search of love and God. After experiencing a life-changing encounter with God, he came to the States where he worked as a youth pastor and now is a full-time minister/pastor. I love talking to this brother. So without further delay, let's get into this episode and welcome Captain Justin Docherty.
All right, Paco. So good to be with you today. Super pumped to just have a good chat and just connect.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for this. Yeah, your voice is sounding nice and full and thick and rich.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got my voice is one of my greatest attributes. It's very compelling and very radio friendly.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, absolutely. So to start off this episode, we're going to go ahead and play a little game. I was reading this article, and not necessarily a game, but I was reading this article from Relevant Magazine. One thing that I think people need to know about you is that you're a man that loves good coffee. Is that right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Same here. I love me some good coffee. This article that I was reading was from Relevant Magazine, and it talks about essentially what your coffee says about your theology.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. Your coffee says about your theology. So I'm going to give you a list of some of these different types of coffee and or coffee methods. I want you to tell me which of those is your number one go-to method or process. And I'm going to tell you, based off of this thoroughly researched paper, that what that says about your theology.
Bring it on.
Yeah, you wanna do this?
100%.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna reveal some stuff about you today, Captain Justin.
Let's do it.
All right, so here we go. Here's a couple of these. There's a French press. There's K-cup cappuccinos.
All right.
Mocha frap with extra whip.
Yum.
We've got it decaf. Gross.
Pointless.
Yeah, pointless. Some organic, locally sourced, weird cold brew thing that actually tastes terrible.
Pretentious.
French vanilla latte.
Girly.
All right, regular coffee from one of those big cylinder things.
Yeah, that's a little bit redneck for me.
That reminds me of the ARC program. They always have those massive vats of coffee.
Got to keep going.
Got to keep the gentleman going, right?
Spirits up.
That's right.
Work moving.
Come on. There's also a pumpkin spice latte.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
Yeah. It's seasonal. I know that's a hit, around these parts of town.
Yeah.
We also have an iced black coffee. There's an espresso.
Yep.
Yep.
Getting that.
Soy macchiato.
Absolutely not.
And that's the last one. So out of all of those, Mr. Docherty, which of those is your favorite? Which of those would be the one that you would go for?
100% French press.
The French press. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I kind of surprised. I thought you were going to say something else, but that's good. I like that. Keeping us on our toes.
Yeah. French press. I mean, there's a number of things that are good that came out of France.
Yes.
And the French press was one of them.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second is fries, right? French fries.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
And then I'd say third would be the accent.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah,
That's
great accent.
Fantastic accent.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. All right, so here we go. The French press. I'm going to tell you what your coffee says about your theology. It says this. This individual insists that their new trendy way to make individual cups of coffee is so much better than what everyone else is currently doing, even though the French press is actually a very old, difficult to master traditional method of coffee preparation.
Wow.
In other words, expect the French press user to have just embraced the liturgical calendar, singing hymns and reading Kierkegaard as if they all just became things cool Christians now do.
Wow. That's just gazing into my soul.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is like one of those things where somebody, I'm sure was very prayerful about it.
It's got my number.
It's got your number. Yeah. Well, I'm very happy that you didn't say decaf. Because according to this, you're a heretic. You would have been a heretic if you drink decaf coffee.
100%. No time. I have no time for decaf drinkers.
No. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I think you said it best. What's the point?
What is the point?
Right? What's the point? Exactly. Yeah. They're just meaningless. All right. Cool. Awesome. So I'll reveal to you which is the one that I would have chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all of these, I would have chosen some organic, locally sourced, weird cold brew thing that actually tastes terrible.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for that. Yep, that would have been the one that I would have chosen. And this is what it would have revealed about me. This individual probably has a beard. I don't.
If you could grow one.
If I could grow one, I'd have the longest, most manliest beard out there for sure.
Yeah.
With the wax too and everything, the oils, the beard oils and all that, everything. I'd have all of that.
Is there such a thing?
It's a thing.
Beard oil?
There's beard oil.
Wow.
There's mustache wax. There's beard oil. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yep. Yeah, amazing. So this says, this individual probably has a beard, wears a pork pie hat, pork pie being like, a drumming company, and of course writes some really stirring 9-minute ballads for the praise band.
Yep, that's you.
Yep, that's me right there. Yep, that's me in a nutshell. That's me in a nutshell. Cool, awesome. Well, thanks for playing along. Yeah, it's good stuff. So, every time that we we gather together and we talk, we're always talking about some really deep, important topics. But there's some really other, just kind of fun topics we talk about. So I'm just kind of curious, like we always talk about music, we talk about maybe some different books that we're reading and stuff like that. So just for ourselves and for our listeners, what are you currently listening to? What albums are you listening to? What artists are you listening to? Let us know what currently is your favorite drink. This is just a little segment here. Your favorite drink right now, and then also what book you're currently reading, something you're enjoying. I think people are always looking for suggestions on some good, music, some good reading materials. So this is your chance to just kind of, enlighten some folk, including me.
Yeah. Well, music, I love music. So I'm always looking out for good new music. So there's a few bands that I've been listening to. I'm really liking Bahamas at the moment, who is a Canadian alternative artist. And so his stuff is really, really cool. There's a band also called Krungbing from Texas.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, wicked band. Yes. So they're infusion of various different influences from funk to Latin and to Indonesian funk. So it's a little crossbreed there. So that's some of the stuff that I'm listening to at the moment. Really enjoying it.
Awesome. Is there any books you're currently reading, or maybe just a book that you've read recently that's been really impactful?
One of the books I'm reading at the moment, which is really interesting, is a book by a guy called John Eldridge called All Things New, and it's just a snapshot of what the kingdom of heaven is like and the promises associated with the kingdom of heaven and what it means to put our hope in His kingdom. So it's a really great place to renew and restore our hope. And so it's a pretty darn good book. I'm enjoying that at the moment.
Is that were you drawn to that book for any specific reason? because of kind of what's happening, right now, with the culture and, was that a reason why?
Yeah, I think it's because I think a lot of people in times of uncertainty are really looking for a place to put their hope. Now, I just think that people generally need to invest their hope somewhere.
Yeah.
So, that's why I think we've got so ultra political, because we're investing our hope in an individual or a party or an ideology. And it just goes to show that that's just human nature. We've got to put our hope somewhere or in something. And this book just outlines it. It's the kingdom. You just put it in the kingdom, the coming kingdom, the king behind the kingdom, the king in the kingdom. And so it's really it's a simple book, but it's effective in keeping our hopes safe and secure and alivening them again.
Yeah. I feel like right now, currently, in just our culture, it kind of feels like we have this hope, which is, in Christ and Jesus, and that kind of manifests itself through the church and believers, and whatnot. But it almost seems like something that's kind of shaking us a bit, with all the cultural, things kind of happening, is I see more people. More and more, they're trying to find something tangible to kind of put their hopes in, whether that's like a political, party, a group of people, finding different tribes to kind of like, kind of come together close with. And maybe it's because of the idea that we think about the kingdom of God. The truth is that it's a reality. Yeah.
Totally.
And it is tangible, but it's so easy to kind of shift our focus off of that, think that it's not tangible maybe. So therefore, like, we see a political group or somebody with a similar ideology that we believe in, we want to go there first, as opposed to, kind of like going to the kingdom.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think there's a dynamic to the kingdom that is so powerful. And so when we actually turn our attention towards the kingdom, we actually see it as something coming towards us.
Yeah.
So it's not actually this thing that we necessarily need to strive towards or to strive to manifest. But when you understand the kingdom, you actually see it as this hope that moves towards you. And that's one of the beautiful things about it, is when Jesus says, pray your kingdom come. He didn't say, help me make your kingdom come. He says, when you pray your kingdom come. So it's something that's actually advancing.
Yeah.
And so when we put our heart and our mind on it and do what Jesus says and seek his kingdom first, we cannot be but filled with a hope, because we see a thing, an ideal that is glorious and encompassing, and we see it advancing towards us. And that is, man, that's so precious. So if you can imagine that you're rooted in a challenging situation, a challenging time, like we all are currently, we're stuck in a moment in time, and we're looking around for hope. But when we look to the kingdom, we see it advancing towards us. And that's so encouraging.
Yeah.
It fills me up,
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. I'm glad you said that. I wrote that down here in my notes, and I think it's something that we can kind of circle back to, in a bit. But I think that's really powerful. What you're saying is that the kingdom is advancing. It's moving forward.
Yeah.
Right. No matter what, it's actually making a forward progression towards that being eternally established.
Yeah, it's not something that's necessarily advancing us into the future, but it's advancing from almost from the future in one sense. It's that which is established as eternally good. Yeah. That is moving towards us in time in this moment. And so, it's lovely. It's something that we can gaze off, not as a far distant land that one day we will enter, but when we gaze off to it, we see it moving powerfully towards us.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, that makes me want to read that book. Yeah. It's just to realign, to kind of realign our perspective, our vision, our eyesight, really on the kingdom.
Yeah, like when Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, like what does he mean by his kingdom? So it's really important to have an understanding of what it means to be mindful of that and to exist in that space.
Awesome. Great. So there you go. Everybody that's listening, if you're looking for a book read, that's a good one to pick up. Once again, what's it called one more time, Justin?
All Things New by John Eldredge.
John Eldredge. And he wrote, I think, Wild at Heart, which was a huge hit.
Yeah.
A couple of years back.
Yeah.
So I think our listeners have probably picked up already, besides me reading the introduction, but just by hearing your voice, right? You didn't come, or aren't from here, from the States, but actually came from a far and distant land. That sounds like, makes it sound like a fairy tale, like some sort of magical thing, right? So you were born, you're born in England, and I know we've had plenty of conversations, and Justin, we just wanted to know, like, what was life like, growing up for yourself?
Yeah. So it was, I describe my upbringing as coming from a contemporary family. So I was born second oldest, 5 children. My mum had 5 children from 4 different fathers. She was a hippie. So we was just really brought up during that time, a social revolution.
Yeah.
And so that had some knock-on effects with our family. So quite unstable, quite unstructured, which meant that there was a lot of freedom, but not much structure.
Yeah.
And so things actually, because there wasn't those parameters in place, morally, and in other ways, it kind of led to difficult times. And so there was drug abuse, alcoholism, which led to domestic violence, which led to homelessness, moving around a lot. So we lived in many different places, lived all over London. So it was really tumultuous time.
Yeah.
But it was kind of interspersed with a sense of wonder as well. So that, it was an upbringing that was filled with joy and difficulty and quite, significant challenges. Yeah.
I think you had kind of like mentioned before, in one of our conversations that there was, this is my kind of understanding or me digesting what you had said, but it sounded like as a child, you had the wonder, because there was less structure, you were allowed to kind of, there was more wonder. There was more of like a, embracing maybe like the mystery, of nature and that, and those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My mum was really, really good at kind of, pointing out some of the mystery of life and the magic of life. And we bought into it as kids, and we soaked it up. And so life was very mysterious and marvelous in some senses, and then in some other senses, it was completely brutal.
Yeah.
So we were exposed to both extremes of reality, and so it was actually really difficult reconciling those two extremes of reality: the beauty, the vibrancy, the color, the freedom. With the wickedness, the evil, the addiction, the selfishness, the confusion, the pain, loneliness. So reconciling those two extremes actually became quite challenging.
Yeah.
And it was one of the reasons why I became a Christian, because in the gospel I see those things explicitly stated and incredibly articulated. With all their nuances, they're just wonderfully articulated in the gospel and in the word of God.
Yeah.
But they also find their union, they're reconciled together.
Yeah.
And that was really one of the things that's super compelling about being a Christian.
Yeah. You had mentioned before that, some of your teen kind of years or whatnot, you had spent it, studying different types of philosophies, different type of kind of, I guess philosophies out there. And at some point you came to know Jesus, to follow Jesus, to give your life to Jesus. My question to you is, at what point did those, kind of philosophies end in terms of like your search or you finding fulfillment in those things? And where where Christianity, where Jesus was able to just come in and be like, I've got it all, like come follow me, and your heart essentially will be full.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I was always quite contemplative, even as a young kid, quite self-aware, always thinking about some of the things that are, some big questions. What's the meaning of life? I was always on the lookout for purpose, for meaning, and so I looked at different religions, ideologies, philosophies. Took those things, constructed my own kind of worldview, which actually looked very much like Buddhism.
Yeah.
And so I would have said that I was philosophically a Buddhist, but not in practice. In practice, I was just a typical adolescent.
Yeah.
But in ideology or idea, I was practicing Buddhist. And so what we do in our search for meaning is that we construct internally what we believe the external reality to be like. So our idea, worldview is supposed to be an internal representation of what is experienced externally. And so when you do that, then you attempt to reconcile your internal life with the external world. And so that's what I see as the purpose of constructing a worldview. And so Buddhism is just an attempt to do that. It's just an attempt to create an internal environment, space that corresponds to an external reality, and then the two become one in that sense.
Yeah.
But what happened is that I met Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I was on a search, and I was going through a little bit of a difficult time. And so I remembered when I was about 9 years of age, and I used to pray, and I believed I had a really an experience or a knowledge of the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the age of 16, I remembered the kind of relationship or interaction that I used to have with God at prayer at the age of 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
And so I just said, God, if you're there, help me out, because I could do with some help. And literally from that moment on, a number of miracles happened, and which eventually culminated in me experiencing Jesus in a Salvation Army shelter.
Wow.
And so what happened is that my world was turned upside down.
Yeah.
Because what I became to be aware of is that this internal reality or construct that we create was no longer then to be constructed or formed by my own ideas, by my own contemplation, but it became informed from an external source, not an experience, but a person.
Yeah.
And so that's how that's how that reconciliation between my internal life and external reality kind of took place. Jesus then started speaking into my life, ordering and informing me of the nature of reality. And so that became a process. So I began to get my information from the scriptures, from a personal relationship with Jesus, knowledge of the Holy Spirit, and so that began to construct my internal worldview, which has helped me to align and to become reconciled to the world, to God, to that external reality.
Yeah, that's really, I think there's something that I'm kind of noticing a bit in the culture, which is that it appears like even within Christianity, everybody's trying to construct or is constructing. Everybody has a worldview, and as believers, I think when we have that relationship with Christ, we're adopting a new worldview, a biblical worldview, God's eyesight, the way that God sees and looks at things, and but it just seems like right now in the culture, it's in Christianity, it's shifting in kind of going down the wrong path where we're beginning to hear even a lot more Christian believers walking away from a biblical worldview for maybe a more secular worldview, and there doesn't appear to be like anything wrong with that. That's kind of the way that I've seen things.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's because for me it comes down to one thing: is it comes down to this idea of self-determination, is that the individual determines their own reality and identity, and I just don't think that that's the healthiest way of how a self is constructed and how that internal worldview is constructed. And I think there are dangers to it, and I think that when we become Christian, that we abandon that right to construct of our experience of reality, and we invite Jesus via the Word of God to construct that internal reality.
Yeah,
I do believe it corresponds unbelievably beautifully with reality itself, with the nature of God, with how the nature of things around us in the cosmos. And I think there's great wisdom in letting Jesus Christ inform our internal sense of self, place. Yeah.
That kind of brings me to a little bit of what I wanted to ask you about as well, because the last few years have been a very difficult, trying time for the Docherty family. It's been a moment that you guys have kind of endured some difficulty in terms of just within your family, and I want you to tell us about that. But as that relates to what we're talking about, worldview, I think this is where the importance of having a relationship with Jesus, a Christian biblical worldview, is absolutely important, because it's the Christian biblical worldview provides assurance. It provides comfort even through like difficulty. It provides meaning, and it allows you to endure even the kind of like the difficult moments of life. So
yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a little bit about my experience, and then share about how I think Jesus, Christianity kind of assists with that experience. Unfortunately, about 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, my son was diagnosed with cancer, leukemia. And it was quite a traumatic event. Everything was very urgent. We had to rush to hospital as soon as we found out, admitted into intensive care, in there for a couple of weeks, plunged into uncertainty, really wasn't sure what it meant, what the future looked like. And then followed by weeks and months of very intense treatment. And then all of the typical symptoms that you kind of see with kids with leukemia. So it was very very traumatic time for everybody. But at the same time, we felt incredibly privileged that this was something that we would experience together. So straight away, we even with our the whole Christian paradigm, but just to be a parent and to be present for your child, for your spouse, for your children. I have a daughter as well, but just to be present for them in their pain, in their challenges, is such an unbelievable privilege. So you don't, even though you acknowledge your own grief and all of the emotions that go around that, anger, etc., questioning, but at the same time, there's such a kind of sense of holiness to this honor that you've been granted to be present, to support, to love, to hold, to encourage someone who's going through this, to be permitted into this really significant time in their lives, is powerful. It's holy. And so even outside of the Christian paradigm, you just don't turn your nose up at those things. And in one sense, you're grateful that you can be present to that degree in somebody that you love's in their life. And so just to be there for my wife has just been an honor. To be there for my son Camden has been one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given.
Yeah.
So that's been, just absolutely gorgeous, and I'm grateful for that. With regards to Christianity and the role that plays in supporting, encouraging, comforting, so I think those things are effects of truth. So they can be effects of other things as well. They can be effects of of things that are not true. But the way I see Christianity is I don't engage it as a religion. I don't engage it as a mechanism to help me move through life. I don't engage it as a set of principles that are helpful, that bring out the best self. I don't see it as something that provides rhythm, structure for my life, though it is all of those things. Christianity is true.
Yeah,
it's truth. It's the nature of things. That's Christianity. So whether we like truth or not, it has nothing to do with why I'm a Christian.
Yeah,
whether I like Christianity, it has got nothing to do with why I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian because I'm utterly convinced it is the absolute truth. It is the best description that we have of the nature of reality. And so the way in which Christianity is articulated for me is just that is how to embrace the nature of things. One of the things about it, I'm just super glad. I just happen to be incredibly grateful that this truth emanates from a loving, sovereign being, and so that's intensely encouraging.
Yeah,
sometimes the truth is not necessarily encouraging,
right?
But in this situation, knowing that He who holds nature, the outcomes in His hands, is benevolent and sovereign, is encouraging. It provides hope, and so in that sense, Christianity can give you hope,
right?
But it can also be quite disturbing, because if it is true, then at the same time it can be quite discombobulating. So that's in essence why I'm a Christian. It just so happens that I find some really cool things within Christianity.
Yeah, beautiful. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and listening to part 1 of my conversation with Captain Justin Docherty. If you enjoyed the conversation so far, be sure to listen to part 2, which will be released next. Believe me, you won't want to miss the second half of this conversation. You're going to walk away encouraged and with new perspective. If you want to get a hold of Captain Justin, you can send us a note or a direct message, and I'll gladly get that forwarded to him. And as usual, if you have any questions or have some topics you would like to hear discussed in the future, you're welcome to reach out to us. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. On YouTube, you simply search California South Division. On Facebook, at California South Division. And on Instagram, it's at California South Division. Anything we've talked about in this episode will be linked in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to Around the Table podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for updates on new episodes. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with part 2 of my conversation with Captain Justin Docherty. Peace.